A while back, I was given this desktop chicken coop, which is a little wooden chicken coop that you can put on your desk if you've ever wanted to have a tiny chicken coop as desk decor. Inside, there's instructions, the wooden laser-cut chicken coop, as well as some hay, the eggs, and of course, a few tiny chickens. This is one of those chickens here. The other chicken I actually already used on a previous project, which you can watch here. This is my chicken mech. And the idea for this project came when I made this project and realized that the chickens it comes with are not proportional to the eggs. So I went out and got a chicken that was a bit more proportional for the eggs provided. And then that led to the idea of what if it was a giant chicken and it made giant eggs, and therefore it would be big next to a human figure, which in this case, I'm using a refugee, which is kind of a sad figure to make, but he's going to be a farmer in this case, carrying around some giant eggs, so a bit more on the lighter side. Luckily, I just need two of these frames. One of them is the man, and the other is the little cart that he's carrying around. And through the power of editing, I put it together. I also put together a small box that came from a separate 1/35 scale kit, and this is where the eggs will be held. These little models are pretty easy to put together and usually fit together pretty nice. This one I had a little bit of trouble with, but I think that was on my end, not the modeler's side. And I do keep the head and the hat separate to make it easier to paint. The only bit of modification I do on the chicken is to very carefully release it from the mortal plane that is the green earth under its feet. And I do that with a very sharp scalpel and very carefully. I do also give it a scrub with a wire brush to make sure that the paint sticks. Then I add it to some paint stands and get it ready for painting, which is what I do for everything else as well. I add some wires and then add them to some paint sticks. The eggs get added to this little paint tree, and then all of these get painted with either black or white primer, depending on what the final color is going to be. Even though the eggs got painted with a white primer, I'm still going to paint them white just to make sure everything is even, and I use that same white color to add highlights to the box, the wagon, and the figures. This is sometimes called a zenithal highlight or a fake sunlight highlight. Basically, it's adding some fake highlights and shadows to make it look more realistic. The chicken, although it looks like I'm painting it white, I'm actually painting it a light gray, as this will be the base coat underneath the white feathers. Again, highlights and shadows. For the base coat of the skin, I'm using this pinky red tone, and then I will add more colors on top using a hand brush. All of the wooden pieces, so the box and the wagon, get a base coat of a dark mahogany color, and then I will add highlights on top of that with my hand brushes. Speaking of hand brushing, let's do some hand brushing, shall we? I'm starting with the chicken, as I thought that would be the easiest starting point, and I'm doing a dry brushing of white over the entire thing. The white dry brushing coats the top sides of all the feathers with white and leaves the bottom side and the low areas gray, and it sort of adds a subtle highlight and shadow. Without these added artificial highlights and shadows, your miniatures are going to look really flat, and all of those little details that are molded in are just going to fade away. And at this point, you may be asking yourself, well, why didn't you just keep the chicken painted how it was originally, because you're just painting it the same color and shades as the original chicken? And to that I say, where's the fun in that? And anyways, starting with this chicken is a pretty good warm-up, because eventually I have to paint the figure, and I'm a little nervous about starting that because I'm not that good at painting miniature humanoid figures. So instead of starting on the figure, I'm going to make the wood look a bit more like wood by dry brushing lighter and lighter layers of a light wood color on top until I'm happy with the final result. Then after I'm done with the dry brushing, I can add a very light coat of a wash just to blend everything together. And now, because there's nothing else for me to procrastinate and make besides the base, which I'll make a bit later, I have to start working on the figure. Now, over the years, I've only painted a handful of human figures, I think around 10, and half of those were skeletons and ghouls, which are a bit easier to paint because they don't have skin. So I get all of my knowledge from YouTube videos that I've watched on how to paint figures. So if you're really interested in starting to paint your own figures, I highly recommend just look it up on YouTube, how to paint minifigs, and you'll get a lot of really good and solid tutorials. The two main lessons that I've taken away from these miniatures are that highlights and shadows, super important, like I've mentioned. And the other thing is that the very tip of your paintbrush is the most important part because that's what you're using most of the time. And a nice sharp tip of your paintbrush is really, really important. I honestly should be doing more practice off camera for painting these miniatures, but I really don't. So every single one I've ever done has been in front of the camera, which can make it a bit harder because when you're painting a miniature like this, you really get the urge to bring it very close to your face so you can get all the details and paint. And you can't really do that when you have a camera in front of you. Either way, I'm actually really happy with how this one turned out. I think it's one of my better miniatures I've ever painted, which makes sense because the more you do something, the better you get most of the time. Speaking of things that make me a better person, my patrons. This is a great time to give a shout out to all my patrons over on my Patreon. Thank you all so very much for the support. I really do appreciate it. This shout out is for you, as that's what you get for being part of my Patreon. You get a shout out in every video, as well as a little sneak peek of every project every week, as long as I'm putting one out, which I didn't do one last week because I was on travel. But I'm back now, and I've already got a few other videos in the works, so hopefully I'm back on schedule. But we'll see. So yes, if you would like to join all of those wonderful people on my Patreon, I'll have links at the end of this video, on my page, in the description. It's all over the place. There's absolutely no pressure to join, but if you do, you are directly supporting this channel, and it makes me feel good inside, so thank you. Another way to directly support this channel and to make me feel good inside is to like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that good stuff, because the more you like and comment and such like that, the more the YouTube gods figure that this is a cool video and should be shown to more people. I do have a bunch of other videos on my channel as well, so if you are enjoying this one, I can almost guarantee it that you'll like at least one other video on my channel. All the painting is done on this project, so now I just need to put everything together, and I'm starting by taking all the really small pieces of hay, and I'm going to use it as filler for the little egg box, because you wouldn't just put raw eggs into a box and wheel them around. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, especially when those eggs are the size of a large watermelon. And of course, no diorama is complete without a base for everything to stand on. In this case, I'm going with the classic foam core board and wooden plaque base that I make for almost every single one of my projects nowadays. And this is foam safe super glue. If you use any other super glue, it will melt the foam, and it will not end well. So make sure you're using foam-safe superglue when you're working with foam. Once I cut off the majority of the foam, I can clean up the edges with a file and rough up the surface to make sure that the glue and such sticks. The glue and such in this case is a mix of Mod Podge, baking soda, brown paint. I mix that up and then realize I want a bit more texture, so I add a small amount of actual dirt from the outside. I then continue to mix up this delicious looking paint layer and stipple it on over the base. And with the shape of this base and color and texture, it looks very much like a hamburger patty. And so once it dries, I sand off some of the texture just because I didn't like how textured it was, which is my fault since I added that texture in the first place. And then I coat everything in barbecue sauce, also known as brown contrast paint. For this one, I decided I would add some static grass, so I add some mayonnaise with my finger, also known as Mod Podge, and then using my static grass applicator, I apply some static grass. Now I could have gone with a shorter static grass to make it a bit more to scale, but I only have one size of static grass, and it's this size, so that's the size I went with. And all of this excess static grass that I'm tapping off, I will save and use for the next project. To add a bit of spice to the grass field, I'm adding even more grass, but it's a different type of grass, therefore it makes it look interesting and different. We are in the home stretch here, and now I just have to glue everything together and then glue those things down to the base. And of course, I also paint the sides black just to make everything look a bit more professional. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that one. It was a fun little diorama, and it's always fun to do these large animal, normal-sized human dioramas. This isn't actually my first one. I did one a while back with a giant squirrel as well, which was fun. I'll leave a link to that here. But this was a fun one, so thanks for watching. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, put them down in the comment section and I'll try to get back to you. I do read every single comment and I try to respond if I can. If you want to check out the other videos on my channel, please go ahead. I have a bunch, like I mentioned earlier. And while you're there, please do subscribe and enjoy. Anyways, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.